If your child is currently a freshman in high school, it is a perfect time to start thinking about their college education. Now, I know what you're thinking. You are probably saying, like, whoa, who are you and why are you rushing me? They literally just entered high school. I am just becoming okay with that. And now you're asking me to start thinking about college. Yes, I am. And here is why. Welcome to another episode of Elephant Corner Financial Lab. My name is Nev Kraguljevic. I am a financial planner and a certified student loan professional. And also, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is working with parents about their child going to college, especially if it's the first time go around and it's been a while for you or you've never done it. Of how do we plan, how do we think, how do we become smart and strategic about it. And so I started this video saying if your child is freshman in high school, now is the time to start thinking about it, even though they're still freshmen in high school and you're going like there's 3 more years. Yes, because what happens is once they enter their sophomore year is the year that everything will begin counting. And guess what? In the fall of this year, in only a few months, they're going to be in sophomore. And we're going to be wanting to start strategically moving things around and preparing ourselves for FAFSA and for CSS profile. And I know it's not sexy to talk about it in February, but we got to talk about it because we got to plan for it. There's a lot of moving pieces that have to happen as we are planning for college education, especially if we're thinking about potentially getting any aid or getting qualified for the federal student loans, which you may or may not want to do. And if you have saved enough, and where is that money, it's a good time to start thinking about it now. Now, the ideal time to actually start thinking and talking about college education and saving for it is when the kids are very, very young. Pre-elementary school, definitely elementary school, middle school, absolutely something to talk about, think about, and plan. And then absolutely we have to do strategies once they become high schoolers. Now, hopefully, if you're watching this, you have been putting some money away and saving for their education. Maybe you plan to cover all of it, maybe you didn't, that's okay. But once they hit into the high school years, into that sophomore year, we like to start thinking about and planning for what is going to happen and how to think about the FAFSA and CSS profile and everything else. Now, of course, you're not going to be applying for it for a little while. But here's the reason why. I'm going to change screen just for a second. In 2026, okay, which is where we are today. So this is today. Okay. Your taxes and your tax returns are going to be applied for 2028, 2029 academic year FAFSA and CSS profile. Might as well include both of them. This is the reason why it's important for us to think and talk about these things earlier rather than later. Because what you do tax planning wise in 2026 is going to affect what is going to happen for FAFSA and CSS profile in 2028. Now, why is that? Well, that's because what they use is called the prior year. It's the official term. It's 2 years back. That's basically what it is. It's 2 years back, but what they do is they call it the prior year. And they're going to request your tax documents. And they're going to look at your income. And they're going to look at your AGI. And they're going to look at all these different things. And so starting, well, I personally think that tax planning should be done regardless of FAFSA or CSS or where you are, and it should be a year-round project. But I'm nerdy that way. So, but if we're thinking about the college, then you definitely want to start thinking about tax planning and tax strategies and strategically thinking about your assets and where things are positioned if you are considering applying for FAFSA, which I believe everybody should. So I know I'm starting a little bit early, But I also have learned over my not super long period of time as a financial advisor, but I've also spent well over a quarter of a century in higher ed working with parents as well. So I do know that when it comes to these things, it's a bit challenging to get us started in advance, for most of us at least. Partially is because, well, we have to deal with money and like think so far ahead. Partially is because it's an emotional, like, but my child just started high school. I'm still not okay with that. And you're asking me to think about them going to college? Not okay with it. So we sort of wait until the last ish minute and we start thinking about it and talking about it in like August and September, right as they're about to go into their senior year, which is not bad. It's actually a good strategy. It's just the year two of what should be happening. In my humble opinion, the year one should be right around their sophomore year. So if they're a freshman now and going to sophomore year in the fall, or if they're a sophomore now and going to their junior year, this is the perfect time to start practicing some of the things and cleaning things up. And then once they hit their senior year, that's year two. That's the actual FAFSA paperwork, CSS paperwork, applying for the schools, writing the essays, doing the whole 9 yards, selecting the schools, doing the appeals, figuring out the last minute finances. But I truly believe that you need to start planning much, much sooner. And when we talk about the tax planning, of course, that is going to impact your healthcare plan if you're in the marketplace and dealing with ACA plans. It's going to impact your IRA and Roth IRA contributions. It's going to impact your Medicare, depending on what age you are that you're applying for. It's going to impact so many different things that I truly believe it's something that should be done sooner rather than later. And depending on where you live, potential increase to the contribution to 529 plan, not only will it help with the college payment and college planning, but it also may help reduce your taxable income. So that's one piece to pay attention to. The other piece to pay attention to is this big change that is coming up in July 1st, 2026, that has to do with student loans and borrowing. Now, I just did a video where I talked about the parents who have Parent Plus loans and why July 1st, 2026 is important for them as the deadline to kind of think about. Now, if you don't have that and you're just starting into it, or you are in the cusp of like, I have some old, I have some new, definitely want to check that video out. But you want to stick here because what is changing is the amounts that you and your student can borrow. So not only are they limited of how much they can borrow, you now also limited of how much you can borrow, and everything else you're going to have to go private or fund it elsewhere. If you have saved enough, then that's great. We don't have to worry about it, and it's perfectly fine. If you have not, the maximum you'll be able to borrow for Parent Plus loans starting July 1st, 2026 is going to be $20,000 per dependent and $65,000 max cumulative aggregate, however you want to call it. Now, I'm going to change screen again because I think it's important for us to put this into perspective. Like, what does that actually mean? What we said is that the max is going to be 20,000 per year per child, right? And the aggregate is going to be $65,000. But that basically, not per year, per child. Okay, this is the max. The math will basically tell you that you won't be able to get $20,000 per year for 4 years, right? You'll get it for 3, and then come senior year, it's not really going to work. And the reason I'm bringing it up, and I always say senior year, is because a few reasons. One, vast majority of schools tend to give the best packages to first-year students. That's one of the sad truths, but like that's how we get you into the door. And because of the excitement and everything else, we sort of figure out and we have saved up some, and it's not as burdensome year one. And then year two rolls around and it's like, all right, it's not pretty, but we got this. Year three comes in, it's becoming challenging, but like you don't want to stop. Year four comes, and that's, again, I told you I spent about a quarter of a century working in higher education. That's when we start seeing, as educators, we start seeing big challenges from parents and students that they can't afford it. And imagine you're like fourth year and you're really struggling. And I've seen it time and time again. I have worked with millions of students over the course of my lifetime in that career. And as a financial planner, I believe that we should be planning for all 4 years so that we prevent that. So what does this actually mean? Is that if this was to happen, right, and you were to borrow, that basically means year one, right, is fine. Year two, fine. Year three, fine. Year four, ex-nay, okay, right? It's problematic because you run out of funds. And so maybe in that year, we are going to be able to take, 5,000 out of the parent plus and the remaining 15,000, again, assuming no inflation, which I know I'm assuming a lot, which is not accurate, that is going to be private student loans. Now, that's not necessarily bad. And if you only have one child, that's not problematic, right? 15,000 out of a private student loan, we'll take care of it, problem solved. The challenge becomes if you have 2 or 3 kids. And because when we borrow from the Parent Plus from the federal government, there's not as much of that like back and forth. Like they'll just give you the money, they know what it's for, and it doesn't affect the debt to income ratio to be borrowing next year. Private student lenders don't work that way. They very much pay attention to the debt to income ratio. My gosh, I couldn't say that. The DTI, debt to income ratio. And as that climbs as you borrow, so say you borrow, and again, I'm assuming you only need 20,000. It's probably going to be more depending on what school you get in. As you borrow and that debt keeps going up, by the time your child number 2 goes to the senior year, could potentially be problematic if we don't plan in advance, which is why I am coming in and saying, I know that it's too early and I know that emotionally is uncomfortable, but this is coming our way and we should really think about it and plan for it in advance. And so this video is really meant to not scare you, but to give you a realistic look ahead and to start thinking ahead and to start projecting to say, I understand my child, number 1, just entered high school, and my child number 2 just entered middle school. But the way that it's going, I might be one of these parents having to deal with this stuff. And then on top of that, of course, we want to talk about like you also saving for your retirement as well, and figuring out how to repay it. So with that in mind is I wanted to come in to give you the food for thought so that you have sufficient amount of time to start thinking about these things well in advance. It's years in advance, which is giving you time to come up with strategies and thoughts and ideas and saving plans so that it's not the last minute thing that you have to deal with. This is one of the things that is really keeping me up at night as I think about not my clients necessarily, but like population as a whole, and think about kind of where the trend is going to say, ooh, I could see this becoming very, very problematic for parents and for students in a few years ahead. Like we won't see it this year. We won't even see it next year. We might not even see it in 3 years, but in 4 or 5 years, we'll definitely start seeing it. And I guess this is my public service announcement of trying to get ahead of schedule. And this is just us talking undergraduate. Come graduate school, if they haven't had a job, which a lot of the younger generation goes directly from undergrad to grad school, they're also limited of how much they can borrow, which means you again have to step in as a parent. And now having to help out with the postgraduate with a master's degree, with a law degree or medical degree or whatever degree that they're looking to get, and still trying to balance everything out. So start thinking about it, start planning about it, start really putting the pen and paper together, and projecting down the line to see, are you on schedule? Are you doing everything that you could? Are you maximizing the opportunities that you can in your own life to not only ensure that your child is okay, but to also ensure that you will be okay as well? So hopefully this was helpful. I wasn't trying to be alarming. I just wanted to go out and say, let's start thinking in advance on some of these things, because we don't always do that. And I want us to be able to do that to improve our own situation, and hopefully by doing this and doing it early enough to help more individuals start planning well in advance, before it becomes almost too late to do much about it. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay money blessed.